It will be a very short presentation because I didn't prepare so much to introduce myself. I am a fashion designer and I learned fashion design in both Taipei and the Netherlands. I studied in ArtEZ. So after my NA, I did some work in fashion industry, also some internship in some houses. But now I came back to Taiwan and as a freelance designer, also doing my own project. So here are some examples of my fashion works that basically I work a lot with different embellishment material and pattern and draping. So I actually feel that it's very difficult for me to say that I'm an artist. I think I'm more like a designer. My thinking is like a designer's thinking, that I'm always trying to work under certain condition and seeking for a certain result. I cannot really like working without any rule or without any special, how to say, special expectation. I cannot just trying to express myself because I don't have a direction by that way. And about fashion, it's like fashion for me is not just about clothing or the industry, but it's the whole system of how people dress themselves. I like the social meaning of fashion, that's how we dress ourselves, how we try to identify ourselves by the way how we looks, and also how a community, they choose the way the in general image of most of people inside this community maybe dressing similar, or like they have similar symbols, the way they present themselves. So it's also about the history of fashion, that we could observe how people dress themselves in certain epoch or certain location, certain place. And this might reflect to their social construction or their the way they presenting themselves is also involved in the way their moral or the power system of that community. So it's one part of fashion that's really attracts me, that you can see how people interact with each other in a community by the way how they look in, the way how they dress themselves, or even the way how they process the material. And also alongside the history, you can see that the evolvement of how people learn to treat their material more and more complicated. It's also associates with the the development of the social construction. Like when you got the empire, you got working people, you got different social level of in the whole big community, then always the material treating can get more and more complicated, and we got those people who put labor in treating the materials, and those people who serve and create the clothing, and in the end those people who got the real power, they are wearing them, and they also wear a lot of symbol on them, like there's certain animal, certain color, there's only certain kind of people, or like maybe only men can wear it, maybe only the emperor can wear it. Maybe when you see a certain kind of color, you know those people, they are in the upper class. All of these, they are part of the fashion system, and I think even we have a more democratic system that people dress themselves, but we can still see it very clearly in different kind of how to say, like in different country, you can see people are choosing different kind of clothing, and this also showing a very similar structure with what people dress in the very ancient history. And my inspiration for creating collections, they are more likely coming from the relation between nature and human. I mean, the inspiration of developing a collection that probably is based on one story, or like to observe one phenomena in the nature, or like even to discuss about how people see nature, or how we regard the world. Nature itself is evolving with the way how we get in information, and how we see stuff that's chosen by the media. And practical wise, I try to mix different kind of material by reconstruct the way how we normally construct clothing. Like we do have knitted clothing, we do have weaving clothing, or a very different level of material, which some part is a very soft part and another part is a very bulky or a very thick or stiff stuff, and I try to mix them together. Also here, there's some past works I try to use light effect in clothing design. So they are basically a very simple, like an IC linked light that can change or just turning on and off in between the movement. And recently I am trying to finding a new working method, a new design method, because I think that fashion in recent years, like in our time, it's somehow starting to feel it's going to it's starting to be boring, and it's starting to getting into a certain kind of reputation. And for me, my personal opinion is that because we are trying to make the production line more as efficient as possible, and we try to divide different level in the whole tailoring process, from like there's designer, there's sampler, there's pattern maker, there's drape maker, and there's those people who's going to cut fabric, those people who's going to sew them together. Even in the sewing process, you can get like 10-30 person, each one sewing only one part of those clothing, and this would make the whole production line very efficient and very cheap to product in the place that they got the cheapest level, and design in the place that they are the mainstream culture in global wise thinking, that those people who are expected to lead the trend, but it's not only the trend itself, but those people who can get the most information about how people possibly think in next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. So we keep those people who got the best information for certain job, and those people who could only work for a very low income to do the most heavy works. Also, we try to make the transportation for clothing, like the mass produced clothing, as cheap as possible. And if your company can build a certain system that your production line is very it's linked efficiently and cheaply, then your company would become the most possible to earn as more money as possible. And the system that we are using, because all the companies, they want to hire people to be part of their production line in this way. So our education also try to train students think each work, each step of tailoring process is separately. Like we will think design is step 1, and probably draping, pattern making is step 2. Then prototyping is step 3, and later we are going to have these cutting people, these people who's going to put embroidery. Like it's also kind of craftsmanship, but it's now independent into one step inside the whole production line. The phenomena of these divided steps, I think it's going back to the designers themselves, that we tend to think the design process is separated. But for me, that making clothing, like in a very ancient time, there's one craftsman who can, from doing everything from design to production to present it to his customer. And probably in his process, his thinking is very different with how we are think about design itself. Like probably he could change his mind in between. Probably he could do some starting to present first, and in between different steps, and trying to change a little bit. But the way that's how we try to make the whole process into a whole industry, make designers start, how to say, we are going to a certain circle that's going into the same direction, in the same mode, and therefore all the clothing starting to look very similar, because we are cutting out the possibilities that we cannot, that's if we are using those kind of design methods, this design will not go in smoothly into this production line. So what I am trying recently is that I try to reconstruct the production steps. I started to learn botanical dye and weaving in National Craft Institute like from 2 years ago. And now I'm trying to weave and in the same time put embellishment and put my pattern on this certain fabric itself. So those are my recent works that I try to weave. And when I make pattern, I already put all the how to say, the color and material arrangement on the pattern, and I am weaving out. I weave this pattern. After that, I cut it out and stitch and sew it into the whole clothing. And I don't need to do extra embroidery. I don't need to use extra material on those parts I am going to be cut. On those parts that will going to be cut anyway. And also I try to make some 3-dimensional samples that's using 3D printing pen, and I do a weave in between. These are still in experiments. That I think the stability and the way how to control the shape and durability is still need to be refined. So yeah, that's a brief introduction of my current works, and I will explain a little bit about the skill I will going to share. You can also find this video in the wiki page that everyone upload their tutorial. So the video is very long. I will go past it very fast. It's about that how we are going to get flat pattern from a 3-dimensional object. In tailoring, we need to learn pattern making and draping with very strict rules. But actually, if you want to make a flat pattern, that probably can be part of your project, or if you want to use a certain kind of material that is not so flexible, you can just mold it on something. Then you can use this method to get a flat pattern, and you can fix everything flat and later to put it together, like even stick it together, or if you stitch it together. So it's like we make one model and later we divide it into different sections. And there will be some small techniques. That's how we are going to mark all these sections clearly, because it's a 3D object, so there must have some curves and some difference between each pattern when you are going to trace it. So we will need to use fabric to trace the pattern, and later we draw it again on a paper. Here's all about how to put marks.
What is the circle for?
The circle is for mark a different kind of assembly mark. The circle is for saying that here there's two different patterns coming together. So when you stitch it, when you are passing that line, you will know that another side there's two patterns.
I see.
Okay, so I think it needs a long time to load. So here I trace it with a fabric. There's a lot of explanation in this video that how can you do it very precisely. In general, we will try to be very precise in every step when we are really making clothing, because the least difference between the real model and your pattern could make sure that it's as similar as possible. And if you have like a very small difference, like ½ centimeter in step 1 and ½ centimeter in step 2, then probably after all the step, in the end, you will have something like 3 centimeter difference. So the steps are kind of boring, but they're somehow useful for us to make this object. So here you can see that I am trying to modify it with ruler. I'm trying to, it's another sample. I'm trying to I trace it on paper and try to put all the assembly marks very precisely. In the end, we are going to put different patterns together and to measure that if we have the same length or the same size that accord in different patterns. So here in the end, I have another sample of things that I finished. So you can see that I have one object with all the cutting lines and a duplicated one with the same cutting lines, but I can make it with another material. So it's basically like this. Okay, I will read. Can you see my face? Yes? No?
Not now. Only see the screen. Yes, we can see your.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, I think it's basically everything that I want to say for now. It's a very short presentation, and if you have any question, I would be very happy to answer. Like even you can write me an email. Is anyone there have any question? No?
Yeah, thank you. May I ask a question? Like, how do you expect that your work can kind of like combine with maybe like e-textile or another kind of skills that in this project for now?
For now, I don't have too much technique on electronic part, but I could imagine that possibly I can find a solution of how a construction can help e-textile to be collide like reasonably with clothing. Or maybe like if I could do some weaving or different kind of embroidery technique that maybe can make the process or construction more stable or even aesthetically, how to say, aesthetically accord with the clothing design itself.
Okay.
Is that did I answer your question?
Yeah. I'm just wondering that because I it's very interesting to see like what you have presented the skill and the way that you think about the design process for now. So maybe you like really care about the for example the fair trade that and how the designer uh, see their works like from the beginning they start to design because like you mentioned that for now the design like in the big factories is already maybe already standardized.
Yeah,
And then
it's also my personal idea, but I think somehow e-textile cannot be very popular or how to say that, accepted by most of company. It's also part of problem that they have already a fixed production line, and it's very difficult to rearrange them. So if the material coming in and there's no position or no step can process it, then for them it will cost a lot to change the way how they construct this clothing.
yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, I thought of something, but I forgot it. But it's okay. So yeah, I think for me that's also the one of the biggest difficulty that we are facing in fashion industry. You can see that recently the trend is a lot about like retro style. We are going back to 70s, 80s, 60s. We are making things in 2000s again. It's like the fashion system itself is also kind of stuck of creativities. You don't see so much amazing or interesting works that looks like you never saw it anywhere. It's because the production line and the way how we make money in the industry is already based on this production system. So even you have better technology, even you have better material, it's very difficult to put them, how to say, put them inside the industry very fastly, because it means that you need to rearrange everything, and that will cost a lot. People can just doing well with very cheap clothing. They think that's all because they're not even seeing interesting things popping up. And the trend recently also showing that, it's my personal opinion, but it's also showing that we are kind of confusing. We are confusing about the internet, the technology. Is it really bringing a better life, a happier life of ourselves, or are we missing this time that we just starting to use internet, we just starting to like globalized, because we kind of missing this interesting and rapid progression time, that so we are trying to wear back those clothing and thinking that, well, there's some nostalgia or some romantic there, because we are now running out of idea of new stuff, and we can only kind of going back and find, okay, yes, by that time clothing by that time still interesting, and things by that time still looks very exciting. Yeah.
Yes, but I think that's like one of the purpose that we host this kind of a project, so that everyone like from different background can come together and try to find inspiration from each other.
Yeah, true. That's also why I think it's very interesting to see everyone's presentation, even it's very far from me or probably difficult for me to understand, but still you can see that different aspects of how people here thinking.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
do we have any
yeah,
other question from
it's
here?
midnight.
Yeah, it's so late here. Okay, so maybe like a thank you all like for the presentation tonight. Like Wei is already left because he has another meeting like right now. So maybe tomorrow at the same time we have another like two participants to share their like skill with us. So maybe see you guys tomorrow.
Yeah, see you tomorrow. And for people who are in Taiwan, good night.
Yeah.
Should I close this now?
Yes. Good night. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.